One win can change everything. I'm Garrick Francis. This is the Inheritance to Income podcast, where we help families, founders, leaders prepare people and systems for what comes next. Today, I want to talk about something a little different, the World Cup. And I want to use the World Cup to talk about something much bigger than soccer. What happens after a breakthrough? The question is not just who won. The question is, what did that win make possible? Most of us know how to celebrate a breakthrough, a big client, the first house, a child who becomes the first to graduate from college, the founder who finally gains traction in their industry, the family business that survives yet another trying season, the team that proves it belongs. But after the celebration comes the real question. What do we build behind the breakthrough? And that's what the World Cup is showing us right now, and the lessons that we can take for our businesses and for our families and for our organizations. Let's start where everybody is celebrating. The little guy, Cape Verde. Sure, Cape Verde lost, but they didn't leave empty. They lost 3-2 to Argentina, the last champion, in extra time, the best team in the world, and the smallest country ever to make the World Cup knockout stage. On the scoreboard, that's an exit, but when they landed back home, there were thousands and thousands of people who came out to welcome them. There was celebration across all of the islands. That tells you the scoreboard didn't tell the whole story. The country saw something different. The children saw something. The players felt something. And the world noticed something. And that's the first big legacy lesson. Sometimes the first great breakthrough is not that you won. It's that you proved you belonged. And their homecoming is evidence. The reception, it can reveal a responsibility. When people come out like that, they're not just applauding a team. They are responding to the identity and the pride and the possibility and the imagination they feel being associated with something. They're saying, we saw ourselves on the world stage and we belong. And that's powerful. But it can also be dangerous if no one builds something behind it. Because emotions fade. Videos move down the timeline, the flags get put away, and then the real stewardship begins. I mean, a day later, we're already talking about the next game, the next round. And while we still remember those players, they're not as cemented in our memory. But in Cape Verde, they are. So what happens to the young child who watched and now believes? What happens to the player who wants a new pathway? What happens to the country that now expects more from itself? What happens to the money, the attention, the pride? And it's not just a soccer lesson. It's similar to what happens in family businesses. The founder gets the company to their World Cup. The founder carries the early pressure and builds the name, the reputation, the relationships, and the confidence. But then comes the next question. Can the organization build beyond the founder's breakthrough? Is the next generation prepared? Can the win become a system? Can the culture mature beyond one heroic season? And there's a family version. The first breakthrough gives hope, and it also creates responsibility. In families, someone becomes the first to build wealth, the first to buy a house or own property, the first to graduate from college, the first to start and run their own business, the first to kick open that door, the first to carry the family name into a new room. Those wins matter. But if nobody builds a system behind it, if nobody explains the decisions, prepares the people, clarifies the responsibilities, and documents the story that creates a pathway, then the next generation inherits pride without preparation. And pride without preparation is extremely fragile. And looking at the World Cup, even established legacies can be disrupted. Germany lost early, and then there's Norway and Brazil. Norway knocking out Brazil matters because Brazil is an established football legacy, destined to be in the Final Four. Brazil carries the history and the stars and the expectations and the mythology. I grew up idolizing Pele. Norway is a small country, and yet one match changed the entire story. Norway beat Brazil 2-1 and reached its first World Cup quarterfinal. And that's a reminder for founders and established leaders. History matters, but history does not exempt you from preparation. Even in the small countries, there were 3 players on Norway's team, including Erling Haaland, the star, whose fathers played for the Norway team one of the last times they were in the World Cup. And so that established legacy can be disrupted by emerging beliefs, by strong systems, and by the right moment. And so when the established legacy carries the expectation, but the emerging legacy carries the possibilities and the potential. In Argentina, a Brazil, France, England, Spain, Portugal, and Germany, those teams carry established legacies. Cape Verde, DR Congo, Egypt, Norway, and even Canada and Morocco are carrying and building different kinds of emerging and renewed legacies. Family businesses have that same tension. The older generation carries memory and sacrifice, relationships, reputation on their shoulders. The emerging generation carries the energy and the possibility and the technology, the adaptation, the innovation, and the look towards future relevance. The challenge isn't choosing one over the other. The challenge is stewardship. But, even with a larger nation like Canada, a breakthrough can change a culture. Canada is a large country with a deep history, but historically not a dominant men's soccer nation. Making the round of 16 for the first time can still shift the culture even after losing to Morocco. The wins weren't just athletic, they were cultural. It gave the country a new reference point for something they could become. For a business, that might be its first major contract. For a family, it's the first home. For a founder, it might be the first moment you realize that the next generation proves it can carry something. But after the breakthrough, leaders have to ask themselves, are we building from this? Or are we just celebrating it? And in the case of Morocco, the goal is not just one moment. It's continuity. It's growth. Morocco is an example of a story that's no longer just a surprise. The emergence of Morocco years ago and after the 2022 semifinal run, Morocco advancing again shows that what happens when breakthrough starts becoming continuity, when structures and systems are put in place. In this tournament, Morocco beat Canada 3-0 to reach the quarterfinals, where they'll face France. And that's what every founder and family should want, an opportunity to progress, to show that that one moment really becomes a movement, not just one good year, not one inspiring child, not just one successful exit, and not just one heroic founder. They want continuity and growth and opportunity. A system that makes the next good outcome less surprising, not normalized, but expected. And then there's Egypt. Momentum for them creates a certain amount of responsibility. So the momentum is a gift, but it can also be a burden. Egypt beating Australia on penalty kicks is another kind of breakthrough. A penalty shootout is pressure made visible. When a team survives it, it creates beliefs. But then Egypt has Argentina next. So when you have a win, you have to be prepared for the next big challenge. The breakthrough now asks you for more. And that happens in business too. You win the client, now you have to deliver. You inherit the property, now you have to steward it. You become the leader, now you have to prepare others. You get the platform, now you have to decide what that platform is for and who is it supposed to serve. And we celebrate breakthroughs faster than we build systems. And that's the real problem, especially for families, founders, and leaders. A founder wins, but the business is still founder dependent. A family builds wealth, but the next generation is not prepared. An organization grows quickly, but the leadership bench is still thin. A parent sacrifices over and over, but the children never really receive the instructions. A professional succeeds, but never turns experience into guidance. A community celebrates the first, but doesn't build enough infrastructure so that the first is not the last. And that's a World Cup lesson. It's also a legacy lesson. Inspiration is not infrastructure. Inspiration matters. It's important. It builds you up. The flag waving matters. The songs matter. The airport receptions matter. The crowds, the videos matter. The tears matter. The children watching matter. But that inspiration is not infrastructure. In soccer, infrastructure means coaches, youth development, facilities, governance, scouting, nutrition, local leagues, a way to make it into the lower professional leagues, player welfare, developing women's soccer and women's sports, long-term planning to improve the soccer culture. In families and businesses, infrastructure means decision rights and leadership development, documented knowledge, financial clarity, authority clarity, unaccustomed family conversations, governance, even at the family level, successor preparation, and a clear understanding of roles and responsibilities. And oftentimes these moments come with resource infusions, but resources don't become legacy automatically. Money is not a legacy. The 2026 World Cup prize structure is significant. Publicly listed prize information shows teams 17 through 32 just for making the knockout round receive $11 million in performance prize money. 9th through 16th for making it to the next round receive $15 million. Every qualified team receives qualification and preparation payments, and you get more as your moments increase. And that matters because teams can leave with real resources. Some teams are established and they have huge budgets. Some smaller nations, the Congo, Cape Verde, others may have much smaller budgets and resources. But here's the bigger point. Money is not legacy. Attention is not legacy. A trophy is not legacy. A breakthrough is not the legacy. The legacy is what gets built, transferred, protected, and prepared because of the breakthrough. And just to take a moment, this is the work we do at Francis Legacy Bridge Partners. We help founders, family businesses, leaders, and families think through what comes after the breakthrough, what comes after success. Not just what you've built, but who's prepared to carry it, what systems are in place to build the proper infrastructure. Not just did you win, but what did the win make possible? Not just what resources do you now have, but what responsibilities need to be clarified and what infrastructure needs to be built. If your business, family, or leadership is at a moment where something's been built, but the next step is unclear, that is where legacy design begins. Look in the show notes. Reach out. We'd love to have a conversation. And so there are 3 questions I think need to be asked after every breakthrough in sports and in business. What did the win make possible? Who must now be prepared to carry it? And what infrastructure must be built behind it? The what did the win make possible is about the vision. How are you going to move forward? What comes next off of the momentum that we've built? What can help the momentum turn into a movement? Who must now be prepared? It's about the people. What are you pouring into people for the next generation and the generations after to build upon the shoulders of those who have achieved this great moment? What must be built behind it? And that's the infrastructure. Families, founders, and leaders usually want to skip straight to the celebration. But the legacy begins when the celebration turns into responsibility. And of course, there's the founder, the main linchpin, the founder's vision. And the founder's win is not the company's legacy. A founder can build something extraordinary and still leave the organization vulnerable. If every major decision still runs through the founder, the breakthrough hasn't become infrastructure. If the relationships are still held by the founder, the breakthrough has not become significant infrastructure. If the next generation has responsibility but no authority, the breakthrough has not become infrastructure. And if the team has confidence only when the founder is present, that breakthrough has not developed infrastructure. The founder's win creates belief. The systems built after the win create the legacy. And in family businesses, you need more than just a good name. In sports, you can have that name that other opponents fear. But in family business, you have to have history and customers, reputation, assets. That's an established legacy. But the next generation still needs training, authority clarity, decision clarity, conflict tools, financial understanding, and room to lead and to innovate. And that's where many family businesses get stuck. They have the pride, but not the preparation. They have history, but they don't know how to hand off. They have the assets, but not the alignment. The World Cup shows us what happens when emerging talent meets established expectation. And family businesses live that every day. And what the World Cup also shows us is you don't want to let the next generation inherit emotion without instructions. Families often celebrate the breakthrough, but they don't stop to explain the story behind it. They don't explain the discipline. They don't explain the sacrifice. They don't explain the relationships or the mistakes that were made along the way. They don't explain the responsibility. There's a lot behind what got DR Congo and Cape Verde and Egypt to this stage. They may seem like a flash in the pan, but there were sacrifices made to get them there. And so it's the same in business. The next generation can inherit the pride, but doesn't understand the preparation. And that's not enough. And then comes, for professionals and second chapter leaders, the question is not only what you've achieved, it is what your achievement makes possible for someone else. Your experience can become mentoring, coaching. Your network can become access. Your reputation can become protection during a tough season. Your lessons become guidance of how breakthroughs are achieved. And your platform becomes the bridge you've built to the next generation so legacy can be built. That's how a personal win becomes a shared legacy. And so when we come back to the World Cup in Cape Verde again, we have to look and see that the homecoming is not the end. It's the assignment. The reception is beautiful all around the world. It's a celebration that I hope continues. But the deeper question is what happens on Monday? What happens next month after the World Cup is over? What happens when the cameras leave? The players, a few of them will move to higher club teams. A couple of the players didn't even have club teams, including the amazing goalie, who had 40,000 subscribers on Instagram and went to 15 million. But in today's society, we move on. And so the players who carry that national memory, and what happens to the money and the attention? The homecoming is not the end, it's the assignment. So we have to think about in life and business and families and sports, how do we deploy what we have now gained from this moment, from this celebration of talent, of victory, of achievement, and make it regular, not normal, but regular, making it an expectation of excellence that we continue to grow from this point. So the better question may not be, did we win? It may be, what did this make possible and what comes next? This is a legacy question. What do wins make possible in your family? What do wins make possible in your company? What did the loss teach you about what comes next? What does it make possible for your community? And what did the win make possible for your next season and the next generation? And let me pause and say that if this episode helps you think differently, please share it with those who you love, care about, who you work with. Hit the like and subscribe button so we can continue to share messages. Business and sports have a lot in common. The competition, the desire to win, the desire to leave a lasting legacy, the desire and the need to train up people who come behind you. About people and preparation and responsibility. And if it stirred something in you, I urge you to start with what we call the legacy deployment reflection. You can find it at francislbp.com or drop us a note and we'd be happy to send it to you. Ask yourself, what did your wins make possible and who needs to be prepared? What responsibility needs to be clarified? What infrastructure needs to be built? What story needs to be transferred with instructions? And so when the final whistle ends, the match ends. But that doesn't end the responsibility. Some teams will advance to the next round of 8, to the semifinals, to the finals, and only one team will go home the ultimate winner. But not every exit is empty. Cape Verde leaves with evidence of their belonging on the world stage. DR Congo leaves with dignity. Canada leaves with a new soccer question of how far it can go. Egypt leaves with momentum. Morocco is showing continuity. Norway just showed that even established legacies can be disrupted. And all of it points to the same lesson. The World Cup gives us the score. Legacy asks what the score awakened. One win can change everything. But it's the work after the win that determines what lasts. Inheritance may begin by default, but legacy requires design. I thank you for the time you've granted me. I don't take it lightly. God bless.